beginning of this album sounds a lot like a wedding, given the traded verses between Ezra and Danielle, the unexpected interpolation of that Melanesian choral song, the campy acoustic guitar, the country-esque slide notes. It reminds me of the kind of heartfelt, cleanly executed shotgun wedding you attend, where you just know the two are gonna divorce later down the line. Ah, Vampire Weekend, where do I start? The In-Betweeners soundtrack or the Ivy League? For every think piece about cultural appropriation, we get another indie song of Ezra Koenig's where he's reaching for notes too high for even a soprano to touch with a ladder. But no matter how playful and hot cocoa-esque they'll be on Contra, or how adventurous and self-journeying they'll be on Modern Vampires of the City, they're always here to just write a solid tune. And you know what? Fair enough. If they can borrow African beatwork, sample Islander songs, flirt with flamenco, then so be it, I guess, as long as they can stir up a good song, regardless of how much it'll end up sounding like the backdrop to an arts and crafts commercial. They seem to be stylistic nomads, the way that they roam the globe for musical influences. FOTB probably actually stands for Fresh Off the Boat. There's no denying that Vampire Weekend this time around have more scope and conceptuality in mind. They're eager to tackle romanticism, the environment, populism, existence, but fuck if I could tell. Their lyrics used to read like literary knowledge flicks as opposed to coherent messages, but now I think I can actually tell what they're going for on tracks like Sympathy, that acknowledges the us versus them mentality against Islam, and Jerusalem, New York, Berlin, which very sternly stands against anti-Semitism, and manages to frame this concern within the global lens that it deserves. Prejudices affect everybody, and connecting this to completely different places on the map is a really clever way to demonstrate that. And then Koenig goes and has some self-aware stabs at the reputation his band has built up for themselves on Rich Man and Unbearably White, not the stronger points on the record, and I don't even think the record has much depth or nuance in exploring these ideas, more than it really just is the beginner's pamphlet to just knowing it exists. And to be honest, considering how much of this album is presented as some sort of exploration of universal and cultural themes, I don't even know if simply scratching the surface is enough anymore, but you've got to acknowledge the effort. So that's why I was going to ask rhetorically, what vessel carries this poetry? And my answer is standard flavoured quirky pop, where the quirky has since been distilled and is now out of the boundaries. Yes, it's apparently influenced by Casey Musgraves, and I could tell because I started zoning out after 3 tracks. If this album really is a scrapbook of travels, as if it were a honeymoon, the music on this album would play during the cheery opening credits scene. It's bright and sunny and hard to deny. It's the pop answer to architectural minimalism, and even though occasionally pearly white grinning, freckle-less sweet melody writing with even sweeter musical features and the vague but classically Vampire Weekend-esque approach to chatting codedly about colonialism, this album just bores me. Not because it is sunny, it's because being sunny is all that it seems to be able to offer. For how much they focused on giving this album a concept and a big scope, it really seemed to distract from what they were good at, flying off the rails a little bit. The delivery here is so clean-shaven, even unseasoned aside from the occasional sprinkle of, fucking time. I suppose Harmony Hall hit a little bit different when it came on this time. I'm not gonna lie, it's a pretty sweet tune, one with a warming acoustic guitar flick on the intro, but then the chorus rolls around in the ooh. Those, they're just filler. The squeaky vocoder harmonies on Flower Moon are quite nice.
Flower moon, curse the night. If the sun don't make things right.
It reminds me of Nate Ruiz when he decided impersonating a guitar solo with his mouth was a good idea. And then elsewhere, the way this band writes melodies for songs like Sunflower just ends up playing out like piano and guitar scale tutorials instead of actually sounding like a togethering, empowering, heartwarming, reassuring song. I don't end up thinking of a harmonizing crowd at a community church. I think of the Hope 6 Demolition Project. Just real quick though, I want to talk about that opening track, Hold You Now, the one that features that Melanesian choir song that I mentioned earlier. It's the one that's in the Thin Red Line soundtrack. Alright, so if you all didn't know, my family's from the Solomon Islands, so I grew up with that song playing from this music library my mum would blast out of her laptop speakers every Sunday. So I heard this thing all my life. So imagine that shock I felt when I put on a bloody Vampire Weekend album, and after the second verse, that song came in. I was bugging out. Sort of hit me, really. I've only been there twice in my life, but that felt like home. Man. For fun, I did film my brother's reaction to the whole thing.
No. That fucking. No, that shit, no. What the fucking, no. No, that's fucked. That's fucked. That's fucked. That is fucked. Yo, nah. Okay, first of all, they thought they could get away with using like an unknown sample. Nah, we know that shit. We know that shit. We're about to expose these fools. That's crazy.
Let's talk about Father of the Bride as a whole. I didn't really like it. It bored me, it's rife with milquetoast tracks, it barely scratches the surface of topics that warrant better insight. Vampire Weekend, do you take this 4 out of 10 to be your wife? Promise to be true to you in good times and in bad, till death do you part? I do.